May 31st, 1889. A low rumble rolls through the Pennsylvania mountains. Then, the earth begins to shake. At the South Fork Dam, 14 miles above Johnstown, a 40-foot wall of water explodes through the valley. In seconds, 20 million tons of water tear through the breach. What had been a quiet mountain lake becomes a moving wall of death, 40 feet high, racing at nearly 40 miles per hour. It detonates. Buildings splinter instantly. Factories collapse. Families are swept away mid-sentence. The city is erased in 10 minutes. Telegraph lines go silent. In the valley below, families are moving furniture upstairs, laughing about just another spring flood. They have no idea a mountain tsunami is coming for them. 57 minutes later, Johnstown will be gone. 2,208 people will be dead, and the men responsible will never face justice. This is the story of how ignored warnings and deliberate negligence turned heavy rain into one of the deadliest disasters in American history. The city in the valley, Johnstown, Pennsylvania. A booming steel town of 30,000 people, built where the Little Conemaugh and Stony Creek rivers meet. The geography is beautiful and unforgiving. Steep hills trap the rivers in a narrow basin. When heavy rains come, the water has nowhere to escape. Flooding is common here, annoying, inconvenient, but survivable. Families are used to it. They move furniture upstairs. They wait. The water recedes. But Johnstown lives under something far more dangerous than seasonal floods. 14 miles upstream sits the South Fork Dam, and in the spring of 1889, that dam is a loaded gun. The South Fork Dam was built between 1838 and 1853 as part of the Pennsylvania Mainline Canal System. An enormous earthwork structure, 900 feet long, 72 feet high, holding back Lake Conemaugh, a reservoir nearly 3 miles long. When the canal became obsolete, the dam was abandoned. In 1862, it partially failed once before. Then, in 1879, it was purchased by the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club, an exclusive retreat for Pittsburgh's industrial elite. Steel magnates, bankers, millionaires. They rebuilt the dam quickly and cheaply, and that's when the problems began. The modifications that doomed a city. To widen the top for carriage traffic, club manager Benjamin Ruff lowered the crest of the dam by several feet. Lower height, less overflow margin. The original discharge pipes, designed to drain the lake during emergencies, had been removed and sold for scrap. They were never replaced, meaning once the lake filled, there was no controlled way to lower it. To protect the club's prized fish, steel screens were installed across the spillway. But during storms, debris, logs, branches, trees would clog those screens, reducing the dam's ability to release overflow. Engineers warned them. Local officials warned them. The dam leaked. It sagged at the center. It had been improperly repaired after the 1862 breach. Benjamin Ruff dismissed concerns. "You and your people are in no danger," he wrote. There were no government inspections, no regulatory oversight, just wealthy men and an aging earthen wall holding back 20 million tons of water. May 30th, 1889. A massive storm system stalls over western Pennsylvania. 6 to 10 inches of rain fall in 24 hours. An extreme event. In Johnstown, streets flood. But residents remain calm. They've seen this before. Up at the dam, caretaker John Parkey watches Lake Conemaugh rise 2 feet overnight. By morning, water is inches from the crest. Debris clogs the spillway. Men scramble to pile mud and rocks onto the top of the dam, trying to raise its height. They attempt to dig an emergency spillway. The trench they carve is knee-deep, nowhere near enough. By early afternoon, water is pouring over the center, the weakest section. The erosion begins. The warnings that weren't heard. At 11 a.m., telegraph messages are sent downstream. The dam is in danger. At 1:52 p.m., water running over breast of dam. At 2:45 p.m., the dam may possibly go, but telegraph lines are failing in the storm. And the people of Johnstown are skeptical. They've heard false alarms before. They stay home. No evacuation, no panic, just routine flood precautions. At 3:10 p.m., the center of the dam gives way. The mountain tsunami. Witnesses describe the sound as a roar like an approaching freight train. It picks up everything: trees, homes, railroad cars, barbed wire from the Cambria Ironworks, entire locomotives. South Fork Village is struck first, then Mineral Point, then East Conemaugh. At one rail yard, engineer John Hess throws his locomotive into reverse, blasting the whistle continuously to warn anyone ahead. It's useless. The wave reaches Johnstown at 4:07 p.m. Survivors later describe a dark mist ahead of it. Then impact. The flood does not flow through Johnstown. It detonates. Buildings splinter instantly. Factories collapse. Families are swept away mid-sentence. Children ripped from their parents' arms. The city is erased in 10 minutes. The stone bridge A&E the fire. At the lower end of town, debris slams into the Pennsylvania Railroad's stone bridge. The arches trap the wreckage. A pile forms. Stories high. Hundreds of survivors cling to floating beams and rooftops inside the tangled mass. Around midnight, oil from overturned tank cars ignites. The debris pile becomes an inferno. At least 80 people who survived the flood burn alive. The fire burns for 3 days. June 1st. Sunrise reveals devastation beyond comprehension. 2,208 dead, nearly 400 children, 99 entire families wiped out, over 750 victims so mangled they cannot be identified. They are buried in a mass grave called the Unknown Plot. 1 in every 10 residents died in under an hour. Property damage exceeded $17 million, over $500 million today. At the time, it was the worst single-day civilian death toll in U.S. history. The newspapers were furious. Manslaughter or murder? Asked the Chicago Herald. The New York Times called it an engineering crime. Cartoonists drew club members sipping champagne while Johnstown drowned below. Survivors filed lawsuits. 4 of them, but the courts ruled the disaster an act of God. No one was held liable, not a single club member paid damages, no criminal charges, no accountability. The wealthy owners walked away. In 2016, hydraulic engineering analysis confirmed what survivors had long believed. The modifications made by the club, lowering the crest, removing discharge pipes, installing fish screens, improper repairs, had cut the dam's spillway capacity nearly in half. The collapse was not inevitable. It was preventable. Clara Barton and the American Red Cross arrived within days. They would remain for 5 months. The disaster helped establish the Red Cross as America's leading disaster relief organization. Legally, the outrage over Johnstown helped shape stricter liability standards for hazardous infrastructure. But for survivors, none of that brought justice. Johnstown would flood again in 1936, and again in 1977. However, neither was similar to the disastrous 1889 flood, a mountain tsunami. May 31, 1889 began as just another rainy day. People moved furniture upstairs, children played in the water. 14 miles away, a dam weakened by negligence was collapsing. When the water came, it did not care who owned the lake. 2,208 people paid for decisions they never made. Ignored warnings. Deferred repairs. Arrogance. The lesson of Johnstown is simple and timeless. When safety is sacrificed for convenience, the bill is paid in lives. And it is never the decision-makers who drown. If you found this story of the Johnstown flood interesting, please like this video or leave a comment. Subscribe to see when my next documentary is up. Until then, you can take a look at this episodes.